So hello and welcome to our presentation this evening of Winter Extravaganza. This is a community collaboration between the Ball State University Libraries, Delaware County Historical Society, Minnetrista, and the Muncie Public Library. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available in the Ball State University Digital Media Repository. First things first, we have some housekeeping rules. You are free to have your video on, but if the numbers of our participants start to grow this evening, it would be helpful with the bandwidth for videos to be turned off. For the time being, we have muted everyone. There will be a time for questions between each segment and at the end of the presentation. If you wish to ask a question, you can use the chat box. The button to access the chat box is located in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. When using the chat box, please make sure that the to field is labeled to everyone. This way, all participants can see the question. If you wish to ask your question verbally, we will ask that you raise your hand. This function is also available in the toolbar under the Participants button. If you click Participants, a box will open up with a list of names. To raise your hand, please click the blue raised hand button and I will unmute you so you can ask your question. So right now, I'm going to ask that everyone who is able to enter into the chat box if they can hear and see our presentation slide. So we've got a couple people that say they can hear and see. All right. So let's do some introductions. My name is Sara, Allison, and I am the head of Archives User Engagement at Ball State University Libraries, Archives, and Special Collections. This evening, we will be hearing from Melissa Gentry, who is the supervisor of the GIS Research and Map Collection at Ball State University Libraries and one of the founders of the Notable Women of Muncie and Delaware County Committee for the Delaware County Historical Society. Lindsay Vesperi is the Archives Collections Specialist for Local History at Ball State University Libraries, Archives, and Special Collections. She is currently a student in the IUPUI Masters of Library and Information Science program. Karen Vincent is the Director of Special Projects at Minnetrista, President of the Delaware County Historical Society, and one of the founders of the Notable Women of Muncie and Delaware County Committee. Sara McKinley, who is the Local History and Genealogy Supervisor of Muncie Public Library and manager of the Carnegie Library branch, was unable to join us this evening. However, we do have her notes and we will carry on. So let's give everyone a virtual round of applause. So tonight we are going to celebrate the holiday traditions of Muncie's past through photographs, rare books, music, company, newsletters, and catalogs and advertisements found in the local history archives at the Ball State University Libraries, Minnetrista, and Muncie Public Library. You'll hear stories from local newspapers and even from the personal diaries of Muncie residents. You'll see how the people of Muncie decked the halls and got decked out to enjoy holiday meals, musical concerts, and cantatas, New Year's Eve parties during the gas boom, and a festive Christmas parade. You'll hear about sleigh rides, snow, and shopping at Ball stores, and what gifts were popular in Muncie in 1888 or during the Great Depression or in the 1970s. You will see unique restaurants and special holiday recipes and menus, hear about how schools celebrated the season, and it wouldn't be Muncie without the annual Christmas Sing. So grab your mug of hot chocolate or eggnog or hot toddy and enjoy the nostalgia of a Muncie winter wonderland. Our first presenter is Melissa Gentry.
Hi, everyone. The Muncie Public Library and Ball State University libraries contain personal diaries of city residents, including Civil War soldiers, a few socialites, housewives, even Rosemary Ball Bracken. Obviously, the authors record their daily lives, but tonight we'll take a peek into some of their holiday traditions. Next slide. One of the Muncie City founders, Thomas Neely, moved to Muncie in 1839 and kept a diary for most of his adult life, from 1860 to 1901. And he definitely was a numbers guy. Next slide. In 1887, as with earlier Christmases, Thomas Neely seems very focused on the gift price tags. He writes on December 24th, "Tonight we distributed a few Christmas presents, gave Eliza, his oldest daughter, a small manicure set, and in the box for the powder, we put $20 in gold, which would be about $500 today. Thad, his son, gave me a beautiful blue plush covered box with a fine set of shaving tools inside. Jenny, his youngest daughter, gave me handkerchiefs, cup and saucer, and quite a number of things else. I gave Jenny a sealskin coat that cost $325. That's about $9,000 today." Then 2 days later, December 26th, Jenny said this morning that if I had no objections, she would rather send the new sealskin cloak back as she did not desire one at present. So that's a little awkward. But on New Year's Eve, Thomas reveals that he was definitely grateful and his focus was on blessings and not prices. Quote, "This ends the year and we as a family have been abundantly blessed in every way. We have all enjoyed good health and prosperity," unquote. Next slide. Across the street from the Thomas Neely house around the same time lived our next diarist, teenager Thomas Ryan. In 1886, Thomas was 14, and he's the one on the far left in this photograph. His popular sisters were Susan, 21, who's seated at the harp, and Mildred, 18, who's seated at on the left side of the harp. They belonged to a prominent family whose father made a fortune in real estate law. Young Thomas was focused on the more social aspects of the holiday season, parties. So on December 15th, 1886, he writes, "I got an invitation to Louise Kirby's party." December 16th, "Tonight I got my Latin lesson and I wrote an invitation to Winnie Brady to go tomorrow evening." December 17th, "This afternoon I was examined in Latin and in the evening I took Winnie Brady to Louise Kirby's party. We had a high time and the Robbins band furnished the music. I didn't get home until 11:30 and Papa didn't like it very well." And on a number of occasions about the Christmas parties at the Kirby house, Thomas refers to them as highfalutin. Next slide. Over several Christmases and throughout the year, Thomas writes a lot about his friendship with Louise Kirby. In fact, her name appears in Thomas's diaries more than anyone outside his family. At one point, he refers to her as his, quote, "old girl," unquote, and how they had a, quote, "daisy time," unquote. They played music together. He showed her the gadgets he made and the drawings he created. He took her sleighing, he sent her cards, and they exchanged personal gifts at Christmas. And every year he attended her Christmas party. But Thomas's plans for an exciting, sociable holiday season go awry at Christmas in 1899. Several girls had rejected his offer to attend the big Christmas dance, and his old girl went with someone else. Thomas writes, "Susie doesn't feel well and will miss the dance. Mr. Douglas of Fort Wayne, who was to take Mildred, missed his train. So as Dean Meeks has arrived, she is going with him. Ed Matty will take Louise Kirby." Suddenly, Thomas's festive spirit was dashed, and he recorded this resolution for the new year of 1890. Quote, "I have made up my mind to study and work hard next year, so I won't have much time for society," unquote. Next slide. The next diary we're going to peek into belonged to Noreen Hawk, who was a young single working woman who lived in the city in 1898. And oh yes, there is drama because Noreen has a boyfriend for about a month and she has high hopes for a romantic Christmas season. Sunday, December 11th, 1898. In the afternoon, had an idea that I might get a sleigh ride. but I didn't. On Saturday, December 4th, Christmas Eve, Noreen records that she had gifts delivered to her friends and her new boyfriend, Warren Emerson. She had bought him engraved hairbrushes. Noreen writes, just after I got home to supper, a messenger brought up a camera from Mr. Emerson. I stayed at home and washed dishes and straightened up things generally. I thought someone would come to take me out to Grace's tonight, but no one came. Noreen mentions feeling blue often in her diary. She also alludes to misunderstandings with her boyfriend, saying, quote, explanations were the order of the evening, unquote. Next slide. On that special night, New Year's Eve, Noreen writes, quote, having a rather blue spell, especially in the evening. Got out of sorts, did not eat any supper, and went to bed at 9:30, unquote. Luckily, Noreen discovers that the true key to happiness and it is not just at the holidays is performing good deeds. On New Year's Day, 1899, Noreen and some friends gathered gifts and planned a party for young underprivileged children. She writes, January 1, 1899, New Year's Day, and a very pretty day. We brought the children into Burton's, where we spent a very pleasant evening, pulled taffy, and then took them home in a hack. I think I had more fun tonight than I have had any night in the last 3 months. Next slide. And inside the back cover of her diary, Noreen clipped, the universe pays every man in his own coin. If you smile, it smiles upon you in return. Next slide. So the last diarist for tonight is Mina McCormick Beckett, a mother of 3 and a housewife in DeSoto. Her husband was Charles Beckett, who owned the Beckett Bronze Company in Muncie. Mrs. Beckett's diaries range from 1933 to 1940, so right in the middle of the Great Depression. We don't have any photographs of Mina Beckett, so this is a pattern illustration from 1933. When I say that Mrs. Beckett was a busy housewife, listen to the tasks that she accomplished in the days leading up to Christmas 1933. Did some good-sized tub washing, cleaned and mopped the kitchen floor, swept the front porch, washed the windows outside, took ironing into the Muncie office to do when the power was out, milked the cows, went to a community meeting, took her children to basketball games at the field house, helped her son Jack with the jigsaw puzzle, told the neighbors, quote, what I thought of them and their dog, unquote, after it bit Jack on the way to school, played rook with the kids, prepared school lunches for all the students at DeSoto for a week, took her kids skating at Selma, churned butter, took Jack for diphtheria shots, took her kids Christmas shopping and for haircuts in Muncie, made about 5 pies, did mending and sewing of costumes, shut off her alarm once and didn't get up till 7:15, found a hockey stick, BB gun, and football for Jack, and silk hose for Martha Lou and a dress for Joanne, hung the outside Christmas lights on December 23rd. On Christmas Eve, delivered hams with her husband to his employees and decorated the tree with the kids, and made dinner. And her dinners were epic. This is actually a photograph of a ring of plenty that I found on the internet. But when Mina made a ring of plenty, a popular recipe at the time of baked macaroni, breadcrumbs, and pimento, the bundt pan hole was actually filled with gravy. On New Year's Day, dinner was pork chops baked on top of scalloped potatoes with lemon pie for dessert. Another favorite holiday dessert was log cabin mousse, which was basically a tapioca pudding with the meringue on top made from maple syrup. Next slide. Of course, Mina kept a record of every Christmas card that she sent. Next slide. And every Christmas card that she received. Next slide. Mina wanted new fireplace andirons for Christmas. Spoiler alert, she did not get them. Next slide. On Christmas Day, the family participated in that popular tradition of going to a movie. In 1933, they saw Alice in Wonderland with Cary Grant and W.C. Fields. In 1940, it was The Thief of Baghdad and a Marx Brothers movie. Next slide. So on New Year's Day, I looked forward to reading what Mina resolved for the year ahead. She had written her entry in shorthand. Unfortunately, I don't read shorthand, but I did spot the telling words at the top, sinus headache. Trust me, as an allergy sufferer, I get it, Mrs. Beckett. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks, Melissa. Are there any questions? It doesn't look like it, so we'll go ahead and move forward. So we're going to take a look at some of the winter themed items that we have here in archives and special collections at Ball State. Photographs always seem to be a staple when documenting history. Here we have two photographs from the campus photo collection. The first one on the left is entitled Beneficence in Winter, and the one on the right is of BSU students taking time away from studying to have a skate on the frozen duck pond. And here from our local history collection, we have Santa Claus arriving by plane just before the 1928 Christmas parade. This photograph is from the W.A. Swift collection. While archives are known for photographs, organizational records, campus and local history, sometimes you find the most random and interesting things. Here we have a letter from Santa Claus to Mary Alice and Priscilla Prow. Santa has written to the two little girls letting them know he would be at their house on Christmas and will bring them lots of nice presents. This letter is from the Prow family papers, which consist of genealogy records and photographs of a local Delaware County family. A somewhat unique item in the archives is this Christmas present from a son to a mother. This artifact is from the Lewis Inglehart papers. Inglehart began teaching at Ball State Teachers College in 1953, and from 1973 to 1979, he was the appointed chairman of the Department of Journalism. He retired in 1983, and his papers were donated to the University Archives. Within the many boxes was this Christmas ornament. Given the nature of archives, sometimes it is unclear as to whether or not when something like this was created. The Ball State University Women's Club started as an informal faculty wives club and then morphed into an organization that included women associated with the university on any level. In 1969, they were still the Faculty Wives Club and produced a cookie recipe book. The selected pages have hand annotations on recipes such as, if using frozen cranberries for the cranberry oatmeal cookie, allow them to thaw thoroughly before or it slows down the baking time tremendously. Or that the frosty apple bits recipe makes approximately 3.5 dozen and you should make the cream first. While music is not a collecting focus for the Ball State Archives, we do have some interesting music-themed items. Here we have some holiday-themed examples of the player piano rolls we received from the Bracken family upon the death of Rosemary Bracken in 1997. These were produced by Duo Art, which was one of the leading companies of player piano rolls in the 20th century. We also have vinyl records in our collection. Christmas Country Style and Country Christmas with Tennessee Ernie Ford and Company are from the Raymond White Western Collection. Raymond White was a faculty member in the history department and his research focused on the lives and careers of Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, and B Western movie stars. One of the local history manuscript collections that we have is the Dorothy Hamilton Papers. Dorothy Hamilton was a local children's author and alumnus of Ball State University. After raising her 7 children, Dorothy focused her time towards writing children's books with themes such as moving to a new neighborhood, poverty, divorced parents, and jealousy. She used these themes to teach children how to cope with similar problems in their own lives. Dorothy Hamilton was also the catalyst for the foundation of the Midwest Writers Workshop. Sprung from the Dorothy Hamilton Writers Club, the workshop was created in 1975, and until her death, she instructed many of the sessions. In May 1979, Ball State presented an honorary Doctorate of Letters degree for her significant contribution to children's literature. The collection consists primarily of manuscripts of her books and writings, as well as transcripts of her talks, book mock-ups, notes from her writing courses, and correspondence. Here we have an example of her work. Christmas at Metamora, an Indiana story, is about a young girl forced to spend Christmas away from home in order to be with the rest of her family. In the manuscript collection, where we have Dorothy's handwritten manuscript. Here you can see the first paragraph written on a legal pad. In our rare book collection, we have a copy of the published book, and you can see the first paragraph, which didn't seem to change much from the legal pad to print. The rare book or special collections book section of our holdings has some of the most interesting hidden gems. Here is a 1904 edition of An Old English Christmas by Washington Irving. The boards of the books have a very detailed embossed design of a peacock on the front and a harp on the back, surrounded by holiday florals. This book is a collection of short stories that were part of the sketchbook of Geoffrey Cannon Crayon Gent, or the Sketchbook. The series was a collection of 34 essays that Washington Irving wrote between 1819 and 1820. The most famous of these stories was Rip Van Winkle and, of course, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. These stories, included in this volume of An Old English Christmas, were published as the 5th installment of the sketchbook in January of 1820. All 5 stories recount the warm-hearted festivities that Irving experienced while in England. In 1876, these 5 stories were published as Old Christmas and included 100 festive illustrations. The edition seen here and in our collection is entitled An Old English Christmas and does not include the illustrations. However, this edition is a wonderful example of the 19th and early 20th century printing. The simple printing of the text with gilded edges and the condition of paper is consistent with early 20th century printing. However, the elaborate decorative binding on canvas over cheap boards was extremely popular towards the end of the 19th century and really flourished around 1890. The second book is A Defective Santa Claus by local Indiana author James Whitcomb Riley. In the spirit of the Christmas poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," Riley delivers a country Christmas Eve story with holiday joy and wonderment for Santa's arrival. Unfortunately, the defective Santa Claus arrives to spread holiday cheer and catches fire from a candle lit by the young child telling the story. Although Christmas is saved when Uncle Sidney throws Santa out into the snow, the children are sent to bed while Uncle Sidney helps Santa fix the tree, and all is well come Christmas morning. Gift books, literary annuals, or keepsakes were common 19th century books with lavish decorative covers. Gift books were a collection of essays, short fiction, and poetry accompanied with detailed illustrations. They were published in the fall in time for the holiday season and were intended to be given away rather than read by the buyer, hence the name gift books. They first appeared in England in the 1820s, and Rudolph Ackerman's Forget-Me-Not, pictured here with the green board and slipcase, is known to be the first. This edition in our collection was published in 1829, while the subtext for this Forget-Me-Not gift book was a Christmas and New Year's Eve present. The stories included in them were not all holiday themed. The Forget-Me-Not gift books were published annually until 1847. In 1829, the first American version of the gift book, The Token, an Atlantic Souvenir, was published and was produced until 1842. The stories within these gift books tended to be prose and poetry themes of sentimental or religious nature by famous authors of the day, such as Mary Shelley, Charles Dickens, and William Wordsworth. And in the United States, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. The Keepsake series was one of the more popular and successful publications of gift books in England. It was produced annually in time for Christmas from 1827 to 1856. It was an anthology of short fiction, poetry, essays, and engraved illustrations. It was designed to appeal to young women and was distinctive for its binding of red cloth and the quality of its steel engraved illustrations. While the publication was first edited by men, by the late 1930s, it was edited by women. The 3 editions in our collection were edited by Marguerite Gardner, Countess of Blessington, who was an Irish novelist, journalist, and literary hostess. The era of the gift book, while short, was a time for women writers. So that's all we have from the Ball State University archives. Are there any questions? I was just looking through some of the chats. I would agree that the Ring of Plenty does not look appetizing. Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on.
Sarah, we just got a question.
Oh, what is it?
Blake asks, can any of these items be viewed in the archives?
Yes, they can. We are still by appointment only because of the pandemic, but you can make an appointment. The Library and University opens back up on January 4th. Archives and Special Collections is open 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the academic year, and you can make an appointment and come in and look at any of the material that was shown today in the presentation. Great question.
We have a couple other another question from Jennifer. Were these volumes given as gifts by the named people?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by the named people. Oh, do you know who gave them? Not specifically the editions that we have. Mostly it was well, actually, I don't know. The gift books that we have in our collection more than likely were probably part of either the Bracken family donation or the Elizabeth Ball donation. In regards to when they were first published, if that's your question, like who in society would give them to, they would be, you know, middle or upper class. They were relatively inexpensive during this time, and printing books were somewhat inexpensive, and they were mass produced. So I would say, you know, anyone between middle class or upper middle class. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to some of the items that are at the Carnegie Library. Now, this was the section that was going to be presented by Sara McKinley. If you have any questions, you're free to post them in the chat as we go through, but we can supply you with Sara's email. She'd be happy to answer any questions you might have via email since she was unable to attend this evening. So here we go. Muncie Matinee Musicals was founded by Nanny C. Love in 1889. She was a music teacher then when she originally created the organization to bring together other women who loved music just as much as she did, and to bring the joy of music to the community. She brought national orchestras and choirs to Muncie, in addition to sponsoring community concerts. Nanny was said to be young and adventurous, which she demonstrated when she did not hesitate to accept the baton to conduct a symphony orchestra without any prior rehearsal. Miss E.B. Ball took over as president in 1908, and the association went on to include junior and senior groups as well. Carnegie has a few of these music booklets stamped with property of Muncie Matinee Musicale, including booklets once used in their annual Christmas program. The group remained active well into the 2000s. Warner Gear, which later became Berg Warner, started in Muncie around 1902 and closed in 2009. The company had an employee newsletter, and Carnegie has a collection of them spanning from 1944 to 2004. The newsletter mainly covered company news and business, but the Christmas 1946 issue included a fun little feature about visiting Santa Claus Land in Santa Claus, Indiana, which is now Holiday World. This is the Ball Brothers employee newsletter from December 1953. Like Warner Gear, Ball Brothers also had their own employee newsletter. Again, most of the newsletter covered general company business, staff news, and the holiday schedule. One small advertisement asked employees to buy Christmas seals to help fight tuberculosis. The idea of selling Christmas seals to combat tuberculosis began in Denmark in 1904 and made its way to the United States in 1907, at which time it became an annual campaign by the Red Cross, then the National Tuberculosis Association, and later the American Lung Association, which continues to sell them today as a fundraiser to combat all lung diseases. There was actually a tuberculosis sanatorium in Fort Wayne where a lot of Muncie residents spent time over the years battling tuberculosis. Carnegie Library has a collection of diaries belonging to Dick Green, one of Muncie's local newspaper columnists. He began writing his diaries in the 1930s as a way to pass the time while he was a patient at the tuberculosis sanitarium. And he wrote about several other residents from Delaware County who stayed there at the same time as him. So it was definitely a cause that hit close to home for a lot of people here. This is a 1954 holiday menu advertisement for the North Star restaurant. The North Star was a popular drive-in restaurant typical of the 1950s. Muncie at one time had 2 locations, and there was also one in Hartford City. The North Star must have also been linked with the Rancho Grande in Anderson, as this shared holiday advertisement featured their menu and locations. They apparently had their own Whopper, which was actually a breaded tenderloin instead of the now famous one of the same name. For $1, you could get a plate lunch with an entree, fries, coleslaw, bread and butter, and coffee. Newspaper advertisements mentioned that they also offered specialty flavored ice cream. Here's a photo of one of the North Star drive-ins from the Lost Muncie Facebook page. It's not clear if this was the 17th and Madison location or if this is the one that was on Tillotson and Godman. But the one at 17th and Madison opened in 1941. It was located where the KFC is now on South Madison. The Smithsonian was Central High School's school newspaper. Their December 1959 issue described the bustling holiday activity happening at the school, such as Christmas caroling in the hallways by the concert choir, a one-act comedy play titled Made to Order Christmas by the Dramatics Club, a Christmas mural of Santa and his reindeer painted on the 3rd floor by one of the seniors, a Christmas window decorated by the art club, a Winter Wonderland record hop, a Christmas piñata made by the Spanish Club, and the Frosty Frolics Band and Orchestra Christmas Party. Central's Rogue Choir joined Muncie citizens in an annual Christmas sing and also performed Handel's Messiah. The issue also highlighted the students' charity work. The Venture Club and Ball Store sponsored a doll contest in which the students created dolls that, after being judged, would be presented to the Delaware County Orphanage as Christmas gifts. There was also a bit of silliness included in the paper, like the fake Christmas album cover that featured the faces of the Central Bearcats basketball team and was titled Music to Win Basketball Games By. Each song title was basketball themed or parodied, like When the Cats Go Marching In. There are some Christmas photos from the Netley family collection at Carnegie. Jim Nettles, Sr., worked for Bob Corp and served in the Navy during World War II. Jim Jr., pictured in the upper left corner, graduated from Central. After graduating from college, he went on to become a pro football player for the Philadelphia Eagles and the LA Rams in the mid-1960s to early 1970s. Local companies and factories often held Christmas parties for their families, with special emphasis on providing something nice for the children of the employees. This is a program from the Marhofer Meat Packing Company's 4th annual Children's Christmas Party, which must have included some Christmas carols and sing-alongs since they included the lyrics to the several carols. Marhofer Packing Company started out as the Keener Packing Company in Muncie in 1901. It was purchased by the Marhofer family in 1945 and ran as the Marhofer division of Keener Packing Company until 1952, when the Keener name was dropped. When Keener was founded, refrigerated storage and transportation had limited availability, so the meat packing and slaughterhouses mostly served Muncie and surrounding communities. For this reason, companies and industries like this were often very hometown oriented. As Marhofer, the company, eventually became one of the 12 largest meat packing companies in the nation before closing in the 1970s. At the height of their business in the 1950s, they even had their own full-page advertisement section of articles in the Muncie Star titled Marhofer Highlights. This Christmas card at Carnegie comes from the Cobalt Dairy Company and is signed by the local milkman, Chet Lake. This was a nice personal touch by the company to have your own local milk delivery salesman sign your card. Cobalt's Dairy started in 1918, and the Cobalt family sold the dairy around 1960. There were several local dairies competing for business in Muncie and Delaware County in the 1930s and 1950s. There were producers, Nottingham's, Johnson's, Jersey Dairy, Orchard Law, Whitney, Cobalt, and Riggin. Milk was home delivered daily. Just as with the meat packing industry, refrigeration wasn't widespread, and so freshness was promoted. Everyone likely got to know their milkman by name. Riggin Dairy proudly continued to offer home delivery of milk well into the 1980s, when it was no longer necessary for freshness, probably because it was such a fond tradition and convenience that many people still appreciated. This Christmas card from Premier Motor Sales in Muncie mimicked a statement or bill of sale. It was addressed as having gone through the post at the North Pole and says the customer's account had been credited to have a very Merry Christmas on December 25th and a happy and prosperous New Year on January 1st. Premier Motor Sales was a Ford dealership that opened in 1952 on South Madison Street, where Clemens Home Solution is now located next to the Burger King. The Ball store's catalogs are always fun to look through, especially their Christmas catalogs. This catalog from 1960 showcased their most popular holiday shopping season, offered in fashion, housewares, gadgets, and toys. The popular toys for boys that year were the American Flyer race game, telescope, microscope, chemistry set, and erector set. Their catalog from the 1970s might have some familiar kitchenware and electronics from days gone by. This year's high-tech gadget from Panasonic were clock radios, 8-track players, cassette recorders, and an 8-inch black and white portable TV. Some will probably recognize the dynamic portable 8-track cassette player. And we can't forget the fashion, like these wildly colored party pajamas. Holiday sleepwear pajamas, especially matching sets, are a popular trend for Christmas, but these holiday pajamas were considered more of a daytime look. The catalog described them as being a wonderful way to entertain and a comfortable way to relax. Maybe they should have brought those back for our holiday entertaining in 2020. So these are some of the fun hidden things in the Special Collections archives at the Carnegie Library. Are there any questions? We can try and answer them, but like I said, Sara McKinley is more than welcome to receive questions via email since she was unable to attend. Okay, so now we're going to move forward to, if I can get this to go forward, to Karen Vincent.
Okay, thank you, Sara. So I'll talk about the Winter Wonderland at ball stores. Let's do the first slide. For people of a certain age, and I'm certainly one of them, Christmas always brings memories of ball stores. The toys, Santa Claus, carolers, gift wrap packages, and especially the decorations, the wonderful decorations. In a newspaper column written not too long after ball stores closed in 1986, Hope Barnes said, "The wonderful window decorations at ball stores rolled out in front of me in my imaginary view. The Christmas ones with the tinseled snow under Santa's sleigh and reindeer, and the lighted toy trains that ran through mountains, towns, and farms." So the story of ball stores started during the Great Depression of the 1930s when times were tough and many retail stores suffered. The W.A. McNaughton Company, located at the corner of Walnut and Charles Streets, was one of them. Next slide, please. And you can see Santa arriving at ball stores here, at McNaughton's, I'm sorry. Bankruptcy was declared in March 1934. Frank C. and George A. Ball felt that the store should not be vacant, nor should it be sold to a chain store. Instead, Ball Brothers Company purchased the building, fixtures, and stock. And this the company was now in the retail business. The newly remodeled and restocked store opened with a gala open house November 13th, 1934. And before I go on to ball stores, note the McNaughton monogram on the building is a trim on the building and the name above the door. Next slide, please. Almost immediately after Christmas Day, thoughts turns to the Christmas season. And I don't have a date for this photo, but it most likely was within a few years after the store opened. And you can see the difference in the outside of the building in this photo. Next slide, please. On December 1st, 1934, Santa Claus took up residence in Toy Town and the celebration began. And on a side note, the popular toys that year included the usual: dolls, fire trucks, teddy bears, and trains. And you probably can't see it on here, but what was advertised as a safe toy in this particular ad, it was a machine gun mounted on legs. It wasn't until the next year, in 1935, however, that themed decorations appeared. On the first floor, shoppers were transported back to the London of Charles Dickens' time to meet many of his characters, including Ebenezer Scrooge and David Copperfield. These 4 feet tall figures decorated the 4 main pillars on the street level floor. And the smaller figures on this floor included carolers and the boy who delivered the goose to Scrooge. The old curiosity shop with special displays of merchandise was set up in the Charles Street window. The second and third floors were decorated with large red wreaths. And so began a tradition that endured until the doors closed in 1986. Next slide, please. Those who strolled past the outside merchandise display windows got caught up in the magic of the season, and decorations throughout the store added to the festiveness. Next slide, please. And I love these two. The one on the left, I swear, had to have been taken on Christmas Eve. The store is absolutely packed and bustling. The other one on the right, though, was taken either before the store opened or after it closed. You can tell by the counters draped in sheets. And let's go on to the next slide. And on the left, we have what is probably one of my favorite views of all stores as you came in the Walnut Street entrance and you looked directly downstairs, because it had two of my favorite departments, the Toyland and the trade shop, the cafeteria. But of course, I'm also sure that what many of us remember most are the story windows. Through the years, the figures in the windows became familiar and anticipated. Planning for Christmas displays started no later than August, and usually much earlier, with the display manager jotting down ideas, making initial drawings, and gathering materials. From his sketches, scale drawings were made and given to the talented in-house fabrication crew for construction. But new construction alone didn't make the display. The designers and fabricators kept a large supply of materials and props needed for these holiday scenes, including mannequins, fabrics, stones and gravel, wigs, paper flowers, twigs and branches, and much more. Next slide, please. For example, Rex Ball, display manager in the late 1940s and early 1950s, along with his assistants, traveled the country roads and gathered more than 1,200 branches to use in the 1950 display. They spray painted the branches silver and attached more than 2,000 ornaments to them. Cabinet maker Elmo Lemur fabricated a very detailed sleigh, which, complete with Santa and lots of packages, flew over the main floor. Next slide, please. Rounding out the decorations that year was a scene in the main window featuring a mother standing at the front door of her house, watching her children with their sleigh and pony cart. Two dogs sitting on the porch added to the hominess of the scene. And another side note, Rex Ball was not related to the Ball family who owned Ball stores, but he certainly had a name that was appropriate for where he worked. Next slide. The next year, Rex Ball and his assistant, Charles Sherrill, introduced the fondly remembered mechanical figures of Santa Claus and his elves into the display. A variety of materials were used to help create Santa's workshop, including lots of paper towels used to create a sculpted paper mache fireplace and a wagon wheel used as a foundation for a chandelier. 4 local girls from the children's class at Muncie Civic Theater provided the voices of the elves. Rex Ball said about viewing the Christmas display, "I get as big a thrill standing backstage and watching the facial expressions of the audience as they do watching the display in motion." And you can tell by this photo that components of the display were used over and over. The elves and Santa were introduced in 1951, but this photo is actually from 1957. Next slide, please. Charles Sherrill was promoted to display manager in 1953, and the Christmas displays got bigger, more elaborate, and even more animated. One of Sherrill's first windows was a skating scene featuring children who skated on ice made of aluminum foil under drifting snow made of plastic. The last animated figure in this scene was a little boy shoveling the plastic snow. All of this movement was against a mural depicting a country scene. A contributor on the Lost Muncie Facebook page said about this display, "The first stop was the window at Ball stores, where I watched the dolls skating in front of the beautiful ice and snow scenes. To me, gazing in the windows of Ball stores was a gift in itself." Next slide, please. And this is another view of the same window. Because of the imagination of the designers, you never knew quite what was going to be seen in the Christmas displays. One year it might be Santa's workshop with elves and toy soldiers, and the next it was angels and castles. There was also a manger scene somewhere in the building, and maybe a polar bear or two. Wreaths, Christmas bells, and trees appeared annually, but because of the magic of the designers and the fabricators, they took on a new look each year. And here are a few more photos of the windows from the 1940s and 1950s. Next slide, please. This window is from about 1948, the late 1940s at least, and it was the night before Christmas. And next slide. And this is the 1952 manger scene. This one happened to be in the window, but as I said, they always had a manger scene somewhere within the store. And the next slide. And this is the 1953 scene. And if you go through all of these, like I said, you'll see the same figures over and over again, just put in different surroundings. And because Christmas is not the only winter holiday, I'll show this last slide of a Valentine's Day window display. Every holiday was something special and spectacular at ball stores. So yeah, let's see the last slide. And all of these photos are from the Minnetrista Heritage Collection. So.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have any questions? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our last presenter, Lindsay Vesperi.
All right, thank you, Sara. So I am going to be talking about the Muncie Christmas Parade. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, please. All right, so some of you in attendance, if you grew up in Muncie, might remember the annual Christmas parade that used to take place here in the city. The parade was held off and on for many years, predominantly through the mid-20th century, with a small resurgence in the 70s and 80s, and was usually in late November or early December. It was inspired by the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which was the cultural kickoff of the holiday season, and typically promoted holiday shopping. The first Muncie Christmas Parade was held sometime in 1926, although there is little documentation of that event. All we do have are photographs, including this one of Santa that you see here on the W.A. McNaughton Company float by the Main Street entrance of the Masonic Temple. Next slide, please. The 1927 parade was more documented than its predecessor. It was sponsored and organized by the Muncie Star newspaper as an effort to kick off the holiday shopping season in downtown Muncie. The first parade featured 24 floats. Unfortunately, the W.A. McNaughton Company float for this year experienced engine trouble just before the start of the parade and was unable to take part. Merchants participating in the parade included the Cade Floral Company, Goodyear Service Station, and Kirk's Sporting Goods Store. The Beatrice Creamery Company handed out free ice cream to child spectators, and it also included clowns, animals, and Santa with 3 of his reindeer. Next slide, please. Of course, as previously mentioned, the Christmas parade was meant to bring Muncie citizens to downtown for Christmas shopping. At this time, the parade was organized by the Muncie Merchants Association, which was a cooperation of many Muncie businesses. Many merchants would feature their products in the parade, which would hopefully encourage spectators to visit their stores at the parade's completion. According to a 1927 article on the Star, downtown businesses experienced brisk business at the close of the parade. It probably helped that Santa made visits to these stores after the parade was over. And another thing worth noting is that a lot of the newspaper articles that would promote the parade would actually encourage citizens to come early and find parking in downtown. That way, if they did, they can shop before the parade started. So a lot of this was really trying to encourage people to do a lot of shopping downtown. So next slide, please. Despite the Great Depression gripping the country, the parade grew more elaborate in the 1930s. Floats from Chicago, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati were shipped in and featured in the parade. Sketches of these elaborate floats were teased in local newspapers in the days leading up to the parade, and included fairy tale characters like Cinderella, the Three Little Pigs, and the old woman who lived in a shoe. Next slide. Of course, Santa would always be prominently featured in the parade. Santa was typically leading the parade on an elaborate float, waving to spectators as he passed. Santa would post at a location and accept child visitors afterwards, which he would usually do up until Christmas Eve. In 1936, Santa was located at a small log cabin in Federal Park in downtown Muncie. And as you can see in this newspaper clipping, Santa's float featured elaborate decoration and reindeer pulling his sleigh. Next slide, please. In addition to floats, Muncie citizens, businesses, and organizations were encouraged to enter a float into the parade for a cash prize. Cash prizes ranged from $200 for best float and as low as $2 for children's costumes. There would also be prizes for the best marching band, which would typically include local schools such as Muncie Central, Royerton High School, McKinley School, Blaine Junior High, Yorktown High School, and many others. Next slide, please. In addition to floats and bands, I discovered that it was common for children to wear grotesque masks and costumes in the parade. Mentions of grotesque costumes appear in documentation of parades in the 1930s and 1940s, such as this 1936 newspaper clipping on the left showing a costume figure called Bad Eye Pete, with a few other grotesque clowns behind him. Another clipping from the 1942 parade documents a large inflatable train engine that featured animated heads of grotesque figures craning out of the windows. Grotesque and sometimes even creepy figures in Christmas celebrations was still somewhat common in the early 20th century, especially in Western and Central European traditions. The English tradition of mumming during Christmas involved costumed citizens running through streets and causing mischief. Other mischievous and dark Christmas figures include Knecht Ruprecht of Germany, Mari Lwyd of Wales, Belsnickel of Southwest Germany, Frau Perchta of Austria, and of course, Krampus, which many people know of Krampus. It is unsurprising that grotesque Christmas traditions made their way to Muncie, as much of Muncie's heritage during this time was German and English or Irish. Next slide, please. Some of this Christmas mischief was still prevalent, though, most notably in the Muncie Christmas Parade of 1950. In this parade, a group of high school boys lined the parade route and pelted snowballs at Santa as his float passed by. The rapid-fire snowballs were apparently so bad that Santa had to be escorted from his sleigh to the Muncie Field House, all while the high school boys attempted to push his sleigh from the top of the float. And I'm going to guess those boys probably got coal that year for Christmas. Next slide, please. The parade continued to operate annually through World War II, all of which were notably influenced by the war. The 1942 parade featured the 150th Field Artillery Band of the National Guard, which was stationed at Ohio's Camp Perry, but was actually originally stationed in Muncie for many years. Organizations such as the War Bond and War Stamp Selling Committee also participated in order to raise money for the United War Funds. The parade also featured an appearance from Uncle Sam, and the Naval Recruiting Office was also represented. Next slide, please. The later 20th century was a less prosperous time for Muncie, including its Christmas parade. There was actually a 15-year gap from 1957 to 1972 where the parade wasn't even held. However, it was resurrected in order to kick off the Muncie Mall's holiday shopping season. This change highlights the shift in American shopping habits, moving from dying downtown districts to the newer shopping malls. This is also the first time the parade isn't entirely downtown. It now ends at the Muncie Mall, where Santa would set up his headquarters to meet children. And as you can see in this photograph, it's a little hard to see, but this is Santa arriving at the Muncie Mall right after the Christmas parade in 1986. So next slide, please. The 80s saw the final years for the annual Muncie Christmas Parade, now referred to as the White Christmas Parade or Muncie's Macy's Parade, It typically started downtown and it ended at the Muncie Mall. These parades also included local celebrities, in quotation celebrities, like Indianapolis news correspondents Kim Hood and Tom Cochran, and an early unnamed viral video star known only as the cult superfan, who also was a Ball State University student. I could not find his name. That is the best I can say for this local celebrity in this parade. Mayor James P. Carey, who was a lover of Christmas himself, rode with Santa during the 1987 parade. Next slide, please. The 1987 appeared to be the last year of the Muncie Christmas Parade, as this is the last time it's referenced in newspapers. Another resurgence was briefly discussed by Muncie business owners in 1989, but ultimately it never came to be. Since then, there are no other references to Muncie Christmas parades aside from nostalgic articles. The Christmas Parade also lives on in groups like Facebook's Lost Muncie, where a quick search will yield some photographs of the parade, along with many comments from Muncie citizens reminiscing on watching the parade and Christmas shopping downtown. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Do we have any questions? Someone asked if the Monoton's Wall Store building is still in exist. Oh, never mind. Karen answered it.
I believe the building it now is that Muncie Commons building that's right across the street from the caffeinery.
Yep.
Oh, another question. Maybe someone else might know what the population of Muncie was in the 1940s and 1950s.
Ooh.
That I'm not sure of. I know it was pretty good. I remember seeing some South Side high school yearbooks, the commencement programs from the time, and there were like maybe 500 students in a single graduating class in the 50s and the 60s, which is pretty significant compared to now. So I think it was definitely a lot more population-wise than we do now, but I can't give an exact number off the top of my head.
Okay, any other questions? Well, we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to place a link in the chat box to a survey that we hope that you will all take some time to complete. It shouldn't be very long, less than a minute. I think Lindsay's going to put it in the chat. Yep, there it is. So we plan to do another Zoom presentation about local history in February of 2021. So stay tuned for some more information. If you have any questions, you can email me. My email was in the, my email address is in the email that you received for the invitation for the session. And we want to thank you again and have a good rest of your evening and a happy new year.